Envision a nation where a call for justice becomes a mask for prejudice, where a boycott of a clothing store transforms into a platform for ancient hatreds to seep into the fabric of society. This is not a distant dystopia. It's the alarming reality unfolding in India with the boycott campaign against Tata's Zudio, spearheaded by groups like Jamaat Islami Hind and its student wing, the Students' Islamic Organization, SIO. What appears as a stand for Palestine, protesting Tata's alleged ties to Israel, hides a far darker truth, a rising wave of anti-Semitism that threatens to erode the very soul of India's pluralistic spirit. Today, we peel back the layers of this campaign, exposing how it manipulates a global humanitarian crisis to fuel division, prejudice, and communal hatred right here at home, demanding our urgent attention and resolute action to confront this insidious threat. The recent boycott campaign against Tata Zudio, orchestrated by Jamaat-e-Islami Hind-linked groups such as the Students' Islamic Organization, SIO, presents itself as a noble act of solidarity with Palestine. Yet, a closer, more critical examination reveals something far more insidious bubbling beneath the surface, a dangerous undercurrent of anti-Semitism that threatens to poison the very wellspring of Indian society. This is not merely about criticizing Israeli policy. It is about weaponizing a legitimate humanitarian crisis to spread age-old venomous hatred against Jewish people subtly and insidiously across India. The very premise of the Zudio boycott, that Tata's alleged business ties to Israel make it complicit in genocide, quickly veers into a territory that transcends legitimate criticism of a state and enters the realm of anti-Semitic tropes. The campaign's public messaging, while cloaked in human rights rhetoric, often fails to distinguish between the Israeli government and the Jewish people. This conflation is a cornerstone of modern anti-Semitism. When activists shout slogans like "Boycott Zudio" and claim Tata is directly complicit in Israeli military actions, they are not just questioning corporate ethics. They are tapping into a deeply disturbing narrative that paints Jewish people, or those perceived to be associated with them, as inherently evil, manipulative, or responsible for global conflicts. The leap from Tata's reported defense partnerships with Israel Aerospace Industries, IAI, or the sale of Land Rover Defenders to the Israeli military to a boycott of a low-cost fashion chain like Zudio is instructive. Zudio's appeal to the lower middle class, its presence in neighborhoods with significant Muslim populations, and its direct competition with smaller local shops all suggest motives beyond pure pro-Palestinian solidarity. As some local commentators noted, this boycott conveniently aligns with the interests of local traders, many of whom are Muslim, who suffer from Zudio's aggressive pricing. This allows for a sectarian economic agenda to be cloaked in the moral outrage of the Palestinian cause. This isn't just shrewd business. It's a dangerous precedent where economic competition is framed through a communal lens, with anti-Israel sentiment as the cover. The targeting of Zudio, a brand with no direct link to defense contracts, reveals a calculated effort to exploit a humanitarian issue for local economic and communal gain, stirring tensions that ripple far beyond the storefronts and into the heart of India's social fabric. But the truly alarming aspect lies in the anti-Semitic undertones that this campaign implicitly or explicitly encourages. While official protest placards might avoid overt anti-Jewish slogans, the digital sphere where such campaigns thrive tells a different story. Online discussions surrounding the Zudio boycott are rife with classic anti-Semitic conspiracy theories, claims about Jewish control of business and finance, or that all of these companies are controlled by BlackRock and its Jewish CEO, Larry Fink. Commenters listing Jewish founders of major tech companies, implying that Jewish people secretly pull the strings in corporate and tech realms, are not engaging in geopolitical analysis. They are regurgitating centuries-old anti-Semitic canards about Jewish global control and manipulation. This insidious blurring of lines is a consistent hallmark of anti-Semitism, when any support for Israel is automatically equated with someone's Jewish identity, and when calls for boycotts extend to businesses simply because they have Jewish leadership. The movement has crossed the line from legitimate criticism of a state into prejudice against an entire people. Jamaat-e-Islami Hind, with its Islamist orientation, has historically opposed Zionism on theological grounds. This theological opposition, however, can easily metastasize into viewing Jewish people in general with hostility, whether intended or not. The lack of overt anti-Jewish slogans at the Zudio rallies does not negate the fact that anti-Semitic sentiment found a clear outlet through this campaign among its sympathizers. This is how prejudice normalizes itself, by riding the coattails of seemingly righteous causes. The SIO's march to a Zudio outlet in Kozhikode, accusing Tata of complicity in the Gaza genocide, amplifies this danger, as it provides a platform for narratives that blur the line between anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism. When a movement fails to clearly separate criticism of a government from attacks on an entire religious or ethnic group, it risks becoming a conduit for hate, subtly embedding anti-Semitic tropes into the public consciousness and sowing seeds of division that could take generations to uproot. Furthermore, the campaign carries a domestic political dimension that further exposes its divisive nature. Indian right-wing outlets and commentators have seized on the Zudio episode to warn of economic jihad, a hyperbolic term, yet one that resonates because the incident does feed into existing sectarian tropes. It provides fodder to those who argue that Islamist groups like Jamaat-e-Islami ultimately seek a parallel Islamic economy, or to punish companies led by Hindus or Jews, rather than genuinely pursuing human rights. This kind of action, whether intended or not, polarizes society, fueling Hindu nationalism by allowing groups like the ruling BJP to point to Muslim radicalism and rally more Hindu voters on a law and order platform. The very act of seemingly taking a moral stand on a global issue ends up cementing domestic communal divides, creating a vicious cycle of mistrust and division that undermines India's pluralistic ethos. The Zudio boycott, by framing a corporate entity as a villain in a global conflict, becomes a lightning rod for political exploitation, deepening the fault lines in an already polarized society. The irony is that this boycott also harms the very people it claims to protect. Muslim employees working at Zudio, Muslim entrepreneurs in its supply chain, and local Muslim vendors near the stores all stand to lose income when protests disrupt business. To call for sacrifice from these vulnerable individuals for a cause that often morphs into anti-Semitic vitriol is not just unfair, it's a profound ethical failing. The Tata Group is resilient. A dip in one brand's sales is a blip. But for a street vendor, a night of lost sales can mean no food on the table. This campaign, while waving the flag of solidarity, disregards the collateral damage it inflicts on the very communities it claims to champion, exposing a hypocrisy that undercuts its moral posturing. It demands sacrifice from those least equipped to bear it, all while cloaking its actions in the guise of justice, leaving behind a trail of economic hardship and social division. In conclusion, the Zudio boycott, while ostensibly about Palestine, has regrettably become a vehicle for anti-Semitism in India. It highlights a dangerous trend where global conflicts are exploited to propagate local prejudice. When a campaign blurs the lines between a state and an entire religious group, when it feeds into ancient tropes of Jewish control, and when it implicitly fosters a sectarian economic agenda, it ceases to be a human rights movement and becomes something far more sinister. India, a nation historically tolerant and welcoming to its small Jewish community, cannot afford to let such bigoted narratives take root. The imperative is clear. Condemn anti-Semitism unequivocally, regardless of the cause it purports to serve, and expose the cynical manipulation of humanitarian crises for communal hatred. We must stand together to reject this poison, to protect the values of tolerance and unity that define India, and to ensure that no cause, no matter how noble, becomes a Trojan horse for hatred. Will you join this fight to keep India's heart open and free from prejudice? Will you stand against the insidious spread of anti-Semitism and work to preserve the pluralistic spirit that has long been India's pride? The time to act is now, because silence in the face of such hatred is a betrayal of our shared humanity.